The following readings are from the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. Each week, we read from both scriptures as prescribed by Yogananda ji and his Guru Sri Yukteswar ji, who was guided by Babaji to compare the two scriptures to show the same underlying truths between them. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. This week's reading is titled, How Should We Meet Our Tests? Last week, we considered Satan's temptation of Jesus in the wilderness after his baptism by John. We discussed the question, does Satan exist? All of us experience temptation of one kind or another in our lives, some of us frequently, others only occasionally. Whether temptation comes to us from our own subconscious or from outside ourselves is secondary to the fact that it does come and that we must deal with it. More important then is the question how to deal with it, in fact, how to deal with tests of any kind. Martin Luther flung an inkpot at the devil, who had appeared to test him. A dark stain on the wall of Luther's cell is pointed out to tourists in support of this story. Unfortunately, our trials are not often so summarily dismissed. As a fellow monk once said to Swami Kriyananda, speaking of Satan, if only I could get my hands on him. Jesus, during his temptations in the wilderness, overcame them and thereby set an example for all time by clinging the more determinedly to God. As Paramahansa Yogananda used to say, darkness cannot be driven out of a room with a stick. Once you turn on the light, however, the darkness will vanish as though it had never been. Jesus manifested this principle. The Bible tells us therefore that at last the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. In the Bhagavad Gita, the point is clarified further by the added explanation that there are three qualities in human nature: sattvic or spiritually elevating, rajasic or ego activating, and tamasic or spiritually darkening. It is this triune aspect of human nature that the third chapter refers to with the words, as fire is hidden by smoke, as mirror is dulled by rust, and as an embryo is enclosed in the womb, so is the indwelling self enveloped by desire. Yogananda explained that each of these examples describes one of the qualities or gunas. Sattva guna, that which elevates our consciousness, can be freed of any identity with ego by a little puff of meditation and right affirmation. Rajoguna, which embroils the ego in restless activity, can be worked off with a little more and a little longer effort. Tamoguna, embracing as it does such mental states as laziness and stupidity, can only be outgrown in time, since it inhibits even the desire for self-improvement. The example Jesus gave us was intended more for those in whom sattva guna is predominant. But if you yourself find elements in your consciousness that resist even the effort to cling to God in prayer and meditation, don't despair. Patience, as it has been well said, is the fastest path to God. As long as your efforts take you steadfastly in that right direction, you will come out right in time. Remember Yogananda's words, a saint is a sinner who never gave up. If, however, your nature impels you, even against your will, to move in the wrong direction towards egoic desires and away from God, strive at least to detach yourself mentally from your wrong actions, which are induced by habit. The time will come when their own stored up energy will tire and diminish. At that time, if you have not contributed to that energy by your consenting will, you will find it possible at last to redirect your energies more constructively. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
This is from Whispers from Eternity, Paramahansa Yogananda's book of prayer poems. This is, teach me to use every dig of criticism to bring myself nearer to thy fountain of goodness in me. Teach me to sport every scar of trials as a medal of thy chastisement, dusky at first, but now shining. Thy sacred hands were the giver, working through thy ever-just law. Let therefore every teardrop of sorrow caused by the actions of others wash away some hidden taint in my mind. Let every stroke of the pickaxe of wounding experience dig deeper and deeper into the soil of my understanding. Let every hurtful strike of circumstance into the soil of my comfort bring me nearer to the bubbling well of thy solace in my heart. Let every gash of others' hatred bring forth from me a loving cry for thy love. Let all my trials be antidotes for bitterness, to bring healing solace to my soul. Let others' unkindness inspire me to be more beautifully kind. Let their darkness not blind me too, but stimulate me to seek thy light. Let their harsh words remind me to use sweet words always. And let every bruise from stones of evil that are hurled at me to Let every bruise from stones of evil that are hurled at me intensify my inner fortitude, that I bless all with my goodness. Inspire me to be like a jasmine vine which sheds flowers on those who administer axe blows to its roots. May I never fail to shower blossoms of help and forgiveness on all who try to cut me with their wickedness. So in hearing that particular poem, one's first thought might be, gosh. But he wasn't saying, please come and cut me down. He was saying, when it happens, let this be my response. You see? This is how you win over these kinds of tests. And they can be the most difficult. Master wrote this, and he said himself that the greatest hurt he experienced in his lifetime was from the misunderstanding of other people. And does it sound like misunderstanding? So you give him he gives us the right response to that. And he doesn't say don't feel it, and he doesn't say don't care and it's all a dream, because that which hurts us on some level we haven't yet seen that it's all a dream, really. And even so, that doesn't help us. We can't just skip over. Yogis never suffer. I am a yogi, therefore I do not suffer. And, that's called a spiritual bypass. It's sort of like when it's time for the 12th standard exams, you just say, I would like my scores, please, without taking the exam. Okay, va? They'll say, "Noke." So we need these tests, but whether we need them, if they come from Maya, if they come from our karma, if they come from our own behavior, because someone's upset because we upset them, as Swamiji said, it doesn't really matter because they do come. These tests do come. So how should we meet them? And it's so interesting to understand the different kinds of tests and to understand that Bhagavad Gita reading at all. I mean, as fire is obscured by smoke, okay, as a mirror is obscured by rust, especially in the days of metal mirrors. All mirrors are metal mirrors, but a lot of them have glass over the little sheet or painting of metal. And then, and as an embryo is encased in the womb, okay, which one of these things doesn't fit? So the soul is eclipsed by desire. You already lost me, so sorry for the soul, I guess. So, But it's very easy to understand once you have Master's explanation that sattva guna is like smoke, easily dealt with. Just a little puff of meditation, and there the fire is. And the rust on a mirror, if you just polish it enough, rajoguna, you put out enough effort, you can get rid of that karma too. And so in that case, it means when we have rajasic karma, a rajasic situation, if we put out effort to sort of match the energy level, not sort of, to match the energy level of the test that's coming at us, then we can overcome it. This is how we grow. You might say, well, that's a much bigger karma to overcome because you have to put out all this effort, but sattva guna, you don't, you just have to puff with the meditation. Well, yes, but you have to learn to meditate, you have to want to have learned to meditate, and you have to think to meditate at the time of the test. We have to remember to meditate, you see? And if you say, well, how do I know if I'll remember to meditate when the test comes, is that we rehearse for that every day. We meditate when there's no test. And then when there is a test, then we already have that forward momentum, as we were describing last week, already going. So that, okay, I'm worrying about this, I'm not thinking straight, let me meditate, because I remember yesterday and the day before, when I meditated, my mind became clearer, my emotions became calmer, so let me do that now when I really need it, because this is a big day compared to these other days that were fine. And then we get to, as the embryo is encased in the womb, there's really nothing much to do. You can, you can polish, but it's going to just take 9 months and that's it. There's really, nothing we can do about it. And so when we have our own tamasic karma, that sometimes can come in the form of illness. That, it just comes. We do have to put out energy to say, look, what kind of things do I need to do to heal? Maybe it means, going to a doctor and taking medicine. Maybe it means I need to just rest. Maybe it means something else. But we have to put out that energy. And at the same time, we can fight it on a sattvic level by praying to God. If we feel to pray for healing, we can. If we don't feel to pray for healing, we could use that time to just pray for others, because that's also a help. But don't pray for others saying, since I'm praying for others, you could, it has to be sincere to just say, if you're going to pray for yourself, just pray for yourself. But if you feel to pray for others because you know others who are suffering, that's a very helpful practice too. But sometimes these things, they just, even if you take the medicine, even if you do everything, they just run their course. That happens in chapters of our life. Sometimes we have a very difficult job. Sometimes our sort of family goes through a very difficult time. And we have steps to do, but a lot of the time it's out of our control. We have submitted our documents and now we wait. Or anything. It just is going to take its time. And then, so we should understand then, prayer can help, but always with the thought, I want this outcome or something better. I want this outcome if you want it. If you don't want it, then I don't want it. If this will help me, give it to me. If it won't help me, don't bother, because I don't want something that's going to slow me down, even though it seems attractive. In other words, always allow for God to say, actually, this is what would be better for you, because He'll do it anyway. But the point is, we're always acknowledging that, first of all, He has a greater vision, a greater wisdom, but also that He is helping us, that He's listening. Otherwise, I'm praying all on my own that this happened. Well, then who are we praying to? If we're the only ones in the universe that can do anything about it? No, of course not. But we shouldn't pester God just saying, I want this, and I want that, and I want that, and also some idli sambar. And delivered. We can't, He's not a waiter that's just fulfilling our orders and bringing it to us. So, what can happen, though, as I was mentioning last week and just wanted to touch on briefly again, is that when we're on the spiritual path for a while, we can, and not even necessarily that, we can feel that basically any time we do wrong, it's our fault. Now, we need to take responsibility for our wrong actions, but a lot of times difficult things happen to us that were not caused by us directly. They say, yes, it was because in Egypt I threw a rock at somebody. Okay, fine, but who cares? If you have a vision and you see the person going, oh, what did you do that for? Then fine. But if you don't, everybody's thrown rocks at everybody and gotten hit. So there's no point in getting hung up on those things. I must have deserved it. On one level, sort of philosophical level, yes. But the point is, does that help? Is it useful? Mostly, no, it isn't. And we should pursue thoughts that are useful. This is the way of the yogi. Do what works. And so if it works, then we want to do it. And so, like I said, blaming ourselves for bad things or blaming ourselves for things that were nobody's fault, that was out of anyone's control, like an accident or a misunderstanding or something that nobody could have really foreseen, just to roll with it, find a way to say, okay, God, help me understand this. We can always accept responsibility for some part of it. For example, suppose we said something that upset somebody. We didn't mean to. We didn't think they would take it that way. And we're even shocked. Just that, this is not at all what I expected to happen. We can apologize. We can hear them out, let them say their part too. And then we can say, yes, but after all, it was an accident. It wasn't my fault. Better to say, how could I have anticipated that? In other words, it was a blind spot. I didn't realize that would happen. We're not trying to be perfect 100%, but we can learn when there is a clear opportunity. Let me try to be more considerate in the future. Let me hear what I'm about to say and hear how it sounds in my head before I utter it. Just, I think you're kind of an idiot. No offense. Oh, you know what? They might take that the wrong way. Let me rephrase. We can always become more aware, more alert, more sensitive. So as opposed to thinking I did right, I did wrong, it was my fault, it wasn't, how can I become even more patient, even more sensitive in a good way, in the sense of aware of other people's realities? And you could say, well, that's all fine for them, but could they do that for me? That's not how it goes. We are in charge of our own behavior. That's it. We have to trust in God for everything else. Then when someone is rude to us, we might remember, you know what? I said something that upset somebody the other day, and I didn't mean to. This person said something that upset me, and they meant to, actually. But so what? Let me just take my tears to God. And so on. If you can work it out with the person, great. There is that level of reality, but you can't always. That's the thing. Sometimes people just aren't listening yet. And so you just have to wait. Or not. Find someone else. But the point is that we don't want to take too much blame for anything. Responsibility, yes. What can I do if only just to pray to God, help me to love you more, because only in you do I feel, as Swamiji said of Master, a constant friend, constant understanding, never a misunderstanding. He said he's always on my side in every struggle against delusion. And so remember that it's really only God who knows everything about you, more than we know ourselves. Swamiji said he was really missing Master because Master had been away for a few weeks. And when Master returned, he saw Swamiji for the first time, he said, I've missed you. And Swamiji said he writes in the New Path, how rare it is that, the feeling of another person's heart can be caught so sensitively like that. You see? And so you have that in Master, you have that in God. And really, what we're all looking for in any kind of human understanding, human love, is divine love. And no human can provide that. Can we provide that? I mean, we get one headache and somebody does make some noise and and it's only because of our headache. And it's not their fault at all. which I remind myself regularly. I was on the phone lately. I was on the phone with someone inviting them to the temple dedication, somebody from another center, and when as in the middle of the conversation, punk, 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 about 1 centimeter above my head, and I said, I'm sorry if you can hear that. He said, I can, yes, and I said, well, it's this is an authentic phone call. Here's the proof that we're making the temple. Bonk, bonk. Anyway, I'd better go. We couldn't, So that kind of thing, I remind myself, it's all for the good, it's all for the temple, it's all for God. And it is, and it's wonderful, especially when you check in on the progress. You say, okay, that's what all the bonk, bonk was for. But we want to be patient, we want to be kind, we want to be compassionate with ourselves. Again, not excusing, but on the other hand, not blaming, because what's the point? First of all, above all other things, all other explanations, it doesn't work. It just makes us feel worse. And we should go through every test coming out with more courage, more determination. I saw an interview of somebody who was going through some kind of testing, like sort of a rigorous training, intentional. But they were having an upset moment because they had done something wrong and not completed something. And the instructor said, why are you so hard on yourself? And they said, my whole life everyone has told me you're no good, you're stupid, you can't accomplish anything, and it just really hurts. And the instructor said, did you ever think to say, I'm going to prove all of them wrong? And, we don't have to respond that way. It does hurt, sure, but use that as motivation to say it's not true. No way. And I remember seeing a debate between two people, a debate for the U.S. president position. It was the election, and there was some gossip about one of them, and the other one was saying, "And you did this, and you did that," and the other one just said, "It's not true. It's not true." And he said, "And that," he said, "It's not true, John." Just completely unflappable. And no, it wasn't true. And so he just rested in the truth. And didn't say, yeah, and what? It's not true. Even the opposition against him wrote the next day, he just sort of danced around the ring like a boxer, and our guy could never land a blow. And so we want to just rest in the truth. If something is true, if somebody does catch us on something, be glad we're paying the karma now, rather than waiting for the next life in some flying saucer, and then we're going to have to say, oh, that's right, on Earth I threw a rock at somebody, So better pay it now. But on the other hand, if it's not true, it's not true. As Master said in that one talk you might have heard, it was unreality. Why should I let it bother me? But remember how the most compassionate, patient person of all is Divine Mother, is God, is Master. Much more patient with us than we are with ourselves. And it's a trap to feel small, to blame ourselves for any kind of circumstance, in the sense, especially if it's out of our control, or another way it manifests on the spiritual path is I feel lesser because this other person, or in my imagination things would be better if. Forget it. It's just not true. God has been helping us this whole time, and God has given us the tools. There was an interesting story Jyotishji shared, you might have heard. You might have read in his letter that came out, I guess it was on Friday, yeah. They are in Italy, Jyotishji and Deviji, right now, and they were as having a spiritual renewal week in Italy with them and other teachers. And somewhat they were discussing Saint Therese of Lisieux. No, not her. Saint Therese of who's the one in the autobiography of a yogi? Yeah, that's what I keep thinking too, but it's not who? Yeah, what's her name? Therese Neumann. Thank you. Yeah, I kept thinking Avila. So, Therese Neumann, Master writes in the autobiography of a yogi how she had lived without any food for many years. And so, someone in the audience asked, But how selfish of her not to teach others how to do that. She learned she could get over this need for food, but what about all of us? And I thought, what did you want? Like, after this, lunch is canceled. But anyway, her point was she had this power and she didn't share it with others. And Jyotishji wrote that Nayaswami Uma just had a perfect answer for that. She just said, but they do teach us what to do. The saints and masters do teach us what to do. But do we do it? Do we listen to them? Do we follow it? And so, in other words, rather than, yeah, no, that's right. Say, right, I am going to follow. You see, to be brave, to be to a certain extent confident in my identity as a child of God, and whether I'm in the middle, in the back, whether I'm, going forwards or backwards, I'm going to aim in the right direction, and I'm just going to start walking. You see, remember that vision Master had when he was a boy, that he was in this very dusty, hot marketplace. This was his sort of dream vision, and everybody was just miserable and hot and other things, making the whole thing unpleasant. And he would see the people in front of him every now and then. They would stop and they would look up, and then they would say, "Oh, it's much too high for me." And after this happened a few times, he turned around to see, and he saw a mountain behind him, and at the top of the mountain he could see this beautiful garden that was far removed from all of this trouble. And he said his first thought instinctively was, "Oh, but it's much too high for me also." But then he said, "It may be too high, but I can at least place one foot in front of the other." And so he did. And in this vision, he quickly reached and entered the garden. Because again, what choice do we have? We will be eventually brought in, like the embryo in the womb. But, if we have any say in the matter, we do, then let's put out energy to gallop, to run in that direction, rather than to just hope that some conveyor belt will eventually drop us off. It won't. We will eventually get there, but it doesn't mean we will sort of sleep our way to God. We have to put out that energy, but cheerfully, confidently, peacefully. If you're feeling too uptight about the whole thing in some particular meditation or vision, meaning thought experiment or whatever, just relax. Sometimes what you need to do is just do something amusing and useless, frivolous, just to relax and enjoy yourself. Remember when Swamiji was with Master and Master brought out the gun with the sparks and then shot the little gun with the parachute, and it, as Swamiji said, we gravely watched it descend. And he said, "What do you think of them?" He said, "They're fine, sir." And Master looked at him seriously and said, "Suffer little children to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." This was what Jesus said. What Jesus was saying, not suffer. Suffer means allow in this case. Because the disciples, all these children were piling on Jesus, and the disciples saying, no, Vaindam. And he just said, let them come, because this is the kingdom of God. Now you have to ask yourself, so children understand the kingdom of God? I mean, this child is still working on e, ooh, and they know the kingdom of God, and I don't? No, what he meant was the innocence of children, the open-heartedness of children, the sort of protectiveness, or the way adults can pretend. That just being open, that is to be childlike, not childish, childlike. And so in the same way, let us remember God is always cheering us on. And so why waste the time in beating ourselves up? Again, if you think about it, because I've had to go through this myself, Master said there should neither be a superiority complex or an inferiority complex. There's usually neither an inferiority complex or a superiority complex, because nobody really uses that other phrase. But there should be neither, meaning they're both exaggerations of the ego. And so, as I was saying last week, we don't want to think we're better than we are, but we don't want to think we're worse than we are. And if we are thinking that, well, then we're having just as much ego as if we were being arrogant. And why exaggerate our own importance in either direction? Just say, I am where I am, I'm going forward. And Master writes of this in the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, his commentaries on that. Master writes, "Too stern an attitude," meaning towards ourselves, "if not offset by the sweetness of love, would alienate man from God. And what is God, if not love itself? It is important to understand that man's state, when viewed impersonally, is not only blameworthy, meaning if we make a mistake, it is also deserving of compassion. God in his divine love yearns to help his human children subject to such numerous temptations. Man receives, during his youth especially, all too few warnings against them from the side of wisdom." And that's another thing. So often we're just hurled unprepared into this world of tests and difficulties and so on. One of the things that is emphasized in the Living Wisdom schools, in addition to, all the usual subjects, is how to get along with others. Because that's one of the greatest, most common sources of human misery, is difficult relationships with other people. I mean, what did Master just write in this poem? And so again, as children, trying to help people to work out arguments even then. And I found out that with young children, when I was a school teacher, that you hear some elevated voices and you come running over to the sandbox and what's going on? He had the shovel and it was my turn and then he took it. And then he said, "Yes, but you had already been having it for a really long time." And so then at first I tried to work out this really elaborate sort of system. Okay, everybody take out a thing and we'll do a vote and we'll calculate. Instead, they said, "Okay, why don't you, is it okay if you give it to him and he plays with it for 2 minutes and then after that, then you can have a turn with it?" Okay. Yeah. And then I used to keep, a timer, time's up, okay? What I realized is 2 seconds later, I'd lost all memory of the experience of the passage of time or whatever. So it was just, I became very confident. You play, sure, and now it's time to pick the flowers or something. So they had moved on. They were living in the moment. And that's actually a good thing for us to do too. It would not show compassion, however, but debilitating pity for God to deprive mankind of the opportunity to grow. For spiritual development, inner strength is necessary. Without it, we would never deserve the kingdom of God, nor have the strength of will and the clarity of wisdom to enter it. So yes, we are all in this spiritual boot camp, spiritual army training. And those kinds of trainings are extreme in what they subject people to. And so we have our own version of that to make us stronger. And that doesn't always mean we just take it quietly. That doesn't always mean that we just suffer and say it's all God. You have to find the right balance. But in general, only expect understanding from God. And only expect clarity and sort of confidence from within. Maybe if it comes through someone else, that's a gift too. But don't rely on that any more than you would want anyone to rely on you, to always say the right thing, to always be thinking of them, their needs and so on. It would be exhausting. And we're just not able to do that. It's not how the game is set up or played. So always go to God, and from there, turn to God, bring God your sorrows. From there, everything else will work out. Also spend time with other positive people. That's a nice balance. Otherwise, we can get a little demoralized, thinking that the whole world is against us, or everybody is thinking this way, and nobody sort of sees eye to eye with me and my values, and you can even feel a little bit crazy sometimes. And so mix with others who are positive, and remember that too, to strengthen you for the next round. Okay, God bless you.